Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special Friday night Joe and Joe weather show. Special because we normally don't do shows on Friday nights. We take a day off. But we've got weather going on, so we figured why not. And the Joe and Joe weather show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Good place to go to get your hurricane emergency supplies if you need to replace them. Safety cans for gasoline, pumps, generators, batteries, you name it. 631-756-1125. The website is omnitruevalue.com, and they do have the best prices in town. These days, the stuff's gotten expensive. And brought to you by also Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, because 6 months from now, we'll be singing Jingle Bells, and you might want your home decorated by someone else, by a professional, or you might want to do this for a living or for a side business. They're your complete holiday lighting specialists, meeting all your decorating needs at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, also on Long Island, also a local business, 631-957-5106. The website is liholidaylighting.com. Oops, hold on. There we go. Little slip.
What happened?
Oh, no, nothing. My finger slipped on the mouse. So I have to do all these technical things so that you look good.
I have two other sponsors that are unofficial sponsors of our show tonight, Joe.
And
one of them,
one is
I think one that you would like, since I know how much you like cigars. This is Super Cigar Crisp.
Is that what they did with
sugar-coated?
Is that what they do with Super Sugar Crisp? They made it super.
Can't get enough of that Sugar Crisp.
Yes.
Sugar Cigar Crisp. These are sugar-coated cigar butts.
Oh God Almighty!
And also, we're also sponsored by Mrs. Clean. She'll wipe up the floor of Mr. Clean if she can find him.
That's correct.
Mrs. Clean. Mrs. Clean.
Mrs. Clean. Yeah, she's still looking.
Every once in a while, we'll have some of these special sponsors that go along with the Joe and Joe show.
Yes.
And we still are waiting for a tropical system. I mean, we have a tropical system, but we're still waiting for her to get a name. And I thought we were going to have one by 5:00 this afternoon, but not quite there yet.
Judging by everything I'm looking at in terms of the satellite, in terms of the surface observations, the issues that we've been bringing up for the last several days regarding the elongated nature of this system is the reason why, even though the Hurricane Center is indicating maximum sustained winds of 45 miles an hour, that has to be over someplace over the Gulf of Mexico, because I've got the land observations that I'll bring up. And last I checked, I mean, there were a few places that were gusting to 30 to 40 miles an hour, but most of the sustained winds on land were between 15 and 25. The strong wind shear in the western Gulf of Mexico, creating this stretched out north-south type system, is preventing it from becoming, from reaching that, checking all the boxes of what is tropical versus what is subtropical versus what is just a plain old low. It hasn't checked. Well, it hasn't checked all the boxes yet, and it's about 100. At this point, it's probably about less than 100 miles from shore and moving at 16 miles an hour. So by the time we get to midnight or shortly thereafter, it's going to be moving inland. So it's running out of time. If it's going to do it, it's got to do it between now and midnight. That's
true. And I posted this on my Facebook page. I don't know if you saw this earlier today. The National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida, giving a 90% probability that we will have our third named tropical cyclone before the end of this day. And that, of course, would be Claudette. Now, the question is, how does the arrival of the sea storm on the 18th of June compare to other years? And looking at all the previous years in the 21st century, and for those of you who think the 21st century began in the year 2000, no, it officially began in 2001. So from 2001 to 2020, I have found that there have been only 4 other years, 2012, 2016, 2017, and last year, 2020, where we had the sea storm form in the month of June. The earliest in this 21st century that we've had a sea storm in June occurred last year. We had Cristobal on June the 2nd. Now, if Claudette does form between now and midnight, it will be the second earliest sea storm that has formed in this century, tying Chris, which also formed on the 18th of June in the year 2012. The latest sea storm in this century, ironically, was also Cristobal. That was on August 23rd in 2014. August 23rd, Joe. Here we are. We're talking about possibly the sea storm today on the 18th of June, and yet in 2014, we didn't get to the seas until the 23rd of August. And the average date of the naming of a storm beginning with the letter C in this century, this 21st century, is the 197th day of the year, which would be the 16th of July. So if the tropical cyclone that's now in the Gulf of Mexico acquires a moniker of sorts, so that would be Claudette, later today or tonight, it would be an unusually early for a sea storm to be christened again. It would tie for the second earliest in this century. And does this mean that 2021 will be similar to last year in terms of tropical activity? I don't know.
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as
Past
mine.
performance.
We'll just have to wait.
Past performance is no indicator of future performance, but sometimes it's all you have to go by.
That's true.
I brought up the surface map. I'm looking at this, and if you look at the wind field of this system, take a look at these observations that are out in the Gulf of Mexico. You've got a south-southwest wind. Let me get rid of the paint box for a moment. So this is the Mississippi Canyon buoy, oil platform buoy. Okay, it's at 28.65 and 89.8 west, and that wind there is south-southwest. Now head down about. This is 27.6. This is 28.6. So 60 miles, just 60 nautical miles to the south. You have the Green Canyon 338 front runner buoy, front runner platform. And here the wind is south-southwest. And I bet you if we had something further south, we probably still would be showing south-southwest winds. In fact, take a look at this one. This is the Maritime buoy down at 25.9 north. So this is almost 160, about 160, 170 miles further south, and the wind here is from the south. And meanwhile, we could do this. We could apply the same to the one on the west side. Now, the numbers you're seeing in the green, that's relative humidity. That's not wind gusts, okay? But here it's northeast at 21, okay, and no wind gusts being reported, by the way. Also, northeast. Up at the March 268 oil platform. So my point is, if you plot when you plot these out, you just look straight off the wind field. I don't have the pressures on the map, but we're just going to use the wind field here. This is your center. I mean, it's so elongated. It's this oval that's stretched out. The actual low, the center of the low is probably somewhere in here. Also stretched out, and this is a problem. You would need to see a kind of tight, wrapped up little low, and then you look at the winds. The Mississippi Canyon oil platform has a south wind at 38 miles an hour with a gust of 39, which is an odd observation. I'm guessing it's probably automated here, but a 38 mile an hour wind sustained. That's the strongest sustained even out in the coastal waters. And then if you take a look along the coast here of Mississippi and Alabama, you've got gusts of 15 to 25. You could have that on a regular day. And these platforms, these oil platforms that are off the coast of Boothville in the southeasternmost point of Louisiana, they all have southeast winds at about 15 knots. Some gusts to 36. Petronius, the Chevron oil platform, here is southeast at 29, gusting to 36. So the main story with this from the onset was rain, and the main story from this today, as we speak, continues to be the rain, which is going to be a problem once this thing moves inland.
Yes, and I was watching the CBS Evening News, the national news, at 6:30. Nora O'Donnell was not there tonight. Have no clue. I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot the name of the gentleman who was filling in for her. But he immediately led off the news tonight by talking about weather events are making headlines tonight. And of course, he mentioned the heat dome out west. But he also made the allusion to the tropical system that we've just spoke of. But he made it sound like it was like a Category 3 hurricane. Storm force winds. The Gulf is battening down, and there's the hope. And I'm saying to myself, it's not the wind, it's the rain. If at most or at worst it'll be the rain and not so much the wind or whatever. Thankfully, Lonnie Quinn, who was on, they threw it to him, and he didn't say I'm correcting you. He just simply said, well, it is a tropical. We are watching anything, but it's going to be a lot more the rain rather than the wind. This is not going to be a wind maker. It's going to be a rain. And I said, thank you so much. But it just goes to show you that in order to attract attention, in order to get people to view the news and to headline everything, I guess it's automatic. If you mention something about a potential tropical cyclone or a tropical storm, it's automatic out of the mouth of the anchor. Well, the winds are going to be, but really, as you just pointed out, Joe, these winds are not much worse than what you would find typically along the Gulf Coast most summer days. Only about 35 or 38 mile per hour winds. And that's really not going to bring any cataclysmic problems. It will be in terms of the rain, which in some cases may be on the order of, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches on average. There may be a few spots if they get a heavy thunderstorm. Some spots may top off at about 7 or 8. But it's a storm. It's of interest. I've always said that we've had many storms up here in New York or in the tri-state area that have pummeled us, but they don't seem attention merely because they don't have a name. Once they get a name, it doesn't matter. Then everybody drops everything, says, "Oh well, Claudette is coming," that kind of thing. So,
Right.
What are you going to do? What are you going to say?
Well, wasn't alone at CBS because I was watching a tease from Shepard Smith for the news on CNBC at 7 o'clock, and the first tease was the tropical storm that's bearing down. Tropical storm bearing down on Louisiana. So,
Right.
CBS is not alone. The Can't Be Serious network, CBS. Is not alone. The Nothing But Crap network, NBC, was right there. I don't know what the always bad and confusing network, ABC, did tonight on its lead, but if I had to bet my money and your money, I'm sure they did something similar. And
if you talk about if you use winter weather, for example, I'm sure that Katrina, of course, if you were in New Orleans or the Louisiana coast, Katrina is way up here. This thing, what we're looking at right now, Katrina would be the equivalent of, let's say, a 2-foot snowstorm or a 2-foot blizzard, or maybe even 3-foot blizzard. Meanwhile, what we're looking at here, would be the equivalent, in terms of a winter storm, maybe 1 to 3 inches with some slippery roads, something along those lines. It's not going to be a paralyzing storm. It's not going to be a crippling storm. It's a storm, and it is going to bring some rain and maybe a few wind gusts, but it's nothing really to write home about. And the darn thing has been having trouble even, getting its act together enough to acquire a name. Who knows? Maybe this might even go through midnight tonight without still getting the Claudette moniker. So we'll see.
Right. If you look on the loop, you can actually see the low-level center spinning away right in there, and it's 3/4 exposed. There's some convection on the east side and on the northeast side, but the northwest, the west, the southwest, the south, and to a certain extent the southeast, not much convection at all. And this is, again, one of the issues. And you'll notice also there's a very broad nature to the low cloud swirl that's on the west side of all of this. Of course, rich in tropical moisture, and that's going to be going into the into the Gulf states, and move into parts of the southeast. And by the way, Johnny Quest reminding me of this. This is Tropical Storm Dolores on the Pacific side that formed right along the coast of Mexico, and that's bringing heavy rain. So it's this is pretty much all one complex of tropical moisture, and you're seeing two tropical storms that are embedded by it. The high clouds, by the way, have now reached up into South Carolina. They are up over me. I kind of clouded over a bit here this evening. Was sort of in and out for a while this afternoon. Had another beautiful morning. We're going to come back to the Northeast in a bit, but while I have the loop up, the transition now, we've had these 3 gorgeous days in a row. Today, this afternoon, the high clouds started coming in. This is all blow off from thunderstorms that are developing in the Ohio Valley tonight with some severe weather. We're going to take a look at that. Now, that cloudiness is marking the leading edge of humid air, and that's going to be our transition overnight in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. We're going to switch over to a very warm and humid air mass to set us up maybe for some severe weather on Saturday, which SPC is indicating. Here's the radar of what's going on in southeast Louisiana and along the Gulf Coast. The rain has moved inland already, so it's already pushed up north of the coast. The yellow band, some heavier squalls are coming in. There appears to be a concentration of heavier squalls in southeast Louisiana, and another healthy band is now approaching the Alabama-Florida state line to about Mobile, and those are all moving to the northwest. And also, kind of interesting here, Joe, look up further north, and this is probably partly the tropical system in an indirect way, but these are daytime showers and thunderstorms that seem to have developed in an arc. That's kind of unusual to see that. But there are a few strong cells there in parts of southeast Georgia, northwest into central Alabama. Very, very narrow, thin band there that swings all the way around into western Louisiana.
Yes, indeed. This activity, Joe, right now you're sitting pretty high and dry, but if all works out the way the models have been suggesting, come Father's Day, I'm afraid you're going to be right in the middle of rather drenching heavy rainfall. Nothing that I don't think that will cause any cataclysmic flooding problems, but it looks like you're going to have a rather wet day on Sunday for Father's Day.
Well, WPC has the yellow is 4 to 6 inches of rain, southeast Louisiana, east of the Florida Panhandle, and then northeast. Montgomery is right on the edge of that. Birmingham is just outside of it. Atlanta is in the thick of it. And if you look to the north of Atlanta, that yellow streak of 4 to 6 inches, I'm inside that yellow streak. I kind of live near that yellow streak, the northeastern part of that yellow streak. Further north.
So you're talking about for you. Why don't we just say it's something like 2 to 5 inches?
Yeah, that seems fair. And by the way, it's been bone dry here pretty much for the last 2 weeks. So 5 inches might be pushing it in terms of much needed rainfall. But if we get a couple of inches of rain up here, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Meanwhile, further along, you see how WPC cut. This is by the way, until this forecast goes through 7 p.m. Monday. And that rain really cuts off once you get out of South Carolina. You have a 1 to 2, it's basically 1 to 2 inches here across southern North Carolina, over to about Wilmington, to just to the southwest of Hatteras. And then the northeastern part of the state is far less than that. I'll put up WPC's map in a moment, and we can take a look at the full map and take a look at what they're doing. But here's the plot of the forecast, weakening it to a tropical depression, and eventually by Monday morning, when it's somewhere forecast to be in northern South Carolina as a remnant depression or a remnant low, turning to the northeast and then to the east-northeast. If you just follow this, if we extend the track here as the Hurricane Center has it, it's going to go out the remnant low is going to go out off the North Carolina coast or somewhere near there. The European and the GFS have been. European seems to hold on to it a bit longer. I'm not sure whether that's correct or not. And on the other hand, the GFS loses it, and I don't know if that's correct either. I mean, maybe it'll be a compromise where there will be a remnant low, but it might not be as obvious as it is on the European model. But it's on the coast here by 1 a.m. So if it's going to strengthen to a tropical storm, it's going to have to do it. It's either going to be on the intermediate advisory, which will be out at 7:20 Eastern time, so it'll be out in about half an hour, or the advisory after that at 11 o'clock. That'll probably be the last chance. And then, of course, Joe, what they'll do is they'll probably go back at the end of the year and say, oh, you know what, this really was a tropical storm. So we'll
it really was.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll just add it to the list.
Right.
How
many times has that happened?
I have WPC's excessive rainfall outlook. I'm going to try to use this a bit more, especially when we have situations like this. And they kind of model it in the same way that SPC does with severe weather. So they've got moderate risk for flash flooding. If you're going to get 6 to 10 inches of rain like they're forecasting, I think a moderate risk, which is greater than a 50% chance. And by the way, a 20 to 50% chance of flash flooding. I would think if you're forecasting 6 to 10 inches, you probably would go with a high risk. But, I'm not making the forecast. I don't know what the criteria is that gets them to that point. Also,
this is interesting. Everybody is focused on that tropical system in the Gulf, and yet on this very same map, they have, I guess, the same criteria or equal amount of concern for the Ohio Valley, and that's what, from that cold front that's coming in. Is it
the warm front cold front combination? Yeah, that's and that's part of what's come. That's where all the severe weather is tonight, and it's on top of the fact that the severe weather risk is enhanced. The stuff there is moving so slowly that they have the flooding potential here added to the mix. Now for tomorrow, WPC on their map has the moderate risk extending up into Georgia, which includes Atlanta. They have the slight risk for me and into parts of South Carolina, and the marginal risk just coming into southwestern North Carolina. And you also see that marginal risk from southern Illinois over into West Virginia, southwest PA, and for Ohio, except for the northwest and the extreme northeast corner. And day 3, which would be, this is Sunday into Monday, they have a slight risk for Georgia, most of northeast Georgia, central Georgia too, southeast parts of southeast Georgia, all of South Carolina, the southern half of North Carolina. The marginal risk cuts off just to the north of there, and then you go into the northeastern part of the state and up to Virginia. They don't have any risk at all. And WPC's flooding maps only go out to a 3-day forecast. Meanwhile, I just want to bring up the watches and warnings map, because we do have flash flood watches up in central and southern Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, southern Mississippi, southeast Louisiana, where the tropical storm warnings are up also there and along the coast. To the north, in the area Joe just pointed out, with what's going on in Ohio, not only do we have flash flood watches up, but we also have a working tornado watch and a working severe thunderstorm watch that's in effect. And in the Southwest, it's all about the heat again. And by the way, that Palm Springs number yesterday, what was it, 126 that I had, 126 or 124, whichever it was an all-time record high for them.
Wow.
All-time record high.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we're only into June, although I'm not, in terms of the seasonal conditions. For example, Los Angeles, the hottest time of the year for them is not July and August, but more like late September, early October with the Santa Ana winds. But to see all of this heat so early in the season, and the summer is not even officially have begun yet. I mean, you got to believe that this is going to be a hellish summer ahead of them for that. But I also noticed, Joe, the folks over at Climate Prediction Center, they have placed our area, the northeastern part of the country, in a fairly high percentage for above normal temperatures for July, August, September. And I'm wondering whether or not they're alluding to maybe a period of, I'm not going to say hellish weather, but hot weather for us sometime down the road in the days and weeks to come. So we'll see how that all pans out.
Well, we'll see. We certainly got a nice surprise this week with what after the heat from the week before. There's SPC's forecast here with the enhanced risk running from southern Iowa, northeastern Missouri, eastward across central Illinois, central Indiana, much of the southern half of Ohio. You see the working tornado watch and the working severe thunderstorm watch. The marginal risk extends, and this is through 12Z. This is through 8 a.m. Saturday morning. So you have a marginal risk running up into north central New York, central PA, and western New York. So the general thunderstorm line reaching out to the coast. Now we have to see whether we wind up getting something with this warm front, if that's what you want to call it. It's more almost like a dew point front that's going through, because you're going to go from dew points in the low 50s to dew points in the upper 60s once it goes by. And, there might be a shower or thunderstorm in that transition. Maybe I thought I threw it in for overnight into tomorrow morning, a scattered shower or thunderstorm somewhere in our zone. But it's later in the day tomorrow that's probably the more important factor.
Now, apparently, some of the models, at least one of the models, one of the 18s, I would presume it might have been the NAM, was actually pulling back on any significant rainfall or thunderstorm activity tomorrow. But you know how those 18Zs are. At least I've never really put too much weight on them. It'll be interesting to see what happens at 0Z tonight, though. With some of these models, that and the HRRR.
If you one of the things I've noticed with thunderstorms, if you pull up 5 or 6 different models and you look at you look at what they're showing, rarely do they match. And I've always feel like with thunderstorms that the trick is to try to figure out which model's got the best handle on the situation. And sometimes you just have to go with your gut instinct as to which model has the best idea. And for tomorrow, by the way, This is the risk area for tomorrow. You've got marginal risk from central Illinois, straight east to northern Virginia, Delaware, and then all of the Northeast except for a small portion of northern New York and southwestern New York. Everybody's in a marginal risk. I don't know. Initially this morning when I was looking at things, I thought maybe they might stick in a small area of slight risk tomorrow for somebody. I think it's possible. I'm not sure, but I think it's possible.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you want to hold on for about 30 seconds, I'll check with the no gaps models.
Yes, please do. Slight risk along the Gulf Coast, Alabama, Mississippi, into the Florida Panhandle. Also slight risk tomorrow, northeastern Arizona, northeastern Colorado, southwestern Nebraska, southern Nebraska. Nebraska's in kind of that weird, little shape that it has there. Got that little cutoff. Otherwise, it would be more of a rectangular state. And also into northwestern Kansas. So that's the risk areas for day 2 and day 3, which is Monday. We'll start to see the next front approaching, and you can see marginal risk indicated on Monday in the middle and upper Mississippi Valley, eastward into the Ohio Valley, and marginal risk also for southeastern North Carolina, much of South Carolina, and central and southern Georgia. So some of that's probably leftover remnants of the tropical system. So I thought I'd start with the FV3 high resolution model, which is the one of the new additions on Tropical Tidbits. And I just went back to Tuesday to show you the upper air with the trough that came into the east on Tuesday. And of course, you see the trough that goes all the way down into Georgia. And this is why we wound up with all this wonderful dry air that made it almost down to the Florida, down almost to the, actually did get to the Florida border or just into northern Florida. Now that trough now is pulling out. It did last night, and now we transition over into a warmer, more humid air mass. You see those jet streaks that are coming through for today are really just kind of representing the high clouds that are around. There's not a whole lot going on from the standpoint of the radar, but then there's some others that come in tomorrow morning. That's really the transition over into the warm, humid air mass. Now here's the short wave, Joe. This is the short wave that's for tomorrow evening. This is at noon tomorrow as it's moving out of Michigan and Ohio and moves very quickly east. There are some pretty interesting looking jet streaks here that move through around 7 or 8 o'clock across New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, southeastern New York, and southern and southeastern New England. So that little kink there is what's going to trigger off the thunderstorms. And I didn't look at the surface of this, but I'm going to see if I can match it up. This is at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. And let's see what it does with the surface. The surface. Hang on a second. We're going to pull that map up.
Oh, certainly.
Certainly. And, this particular model has a cluster of heavy thunderstorms there in northeastern Pennsylvania and on up into the Catskills. I'm just trying to get this map to load. Here we go. And by 10 p.m., they're in northern New Jersey, Connecticut, and they kind of hold together here. It's a little cluster, and there's a couple of strong cells in that mix that move on through. So that's your cold front that comes through. The NAM, as you said, really doesn't show very much. The GFS actually showed quite a bit with with showers and thunderstorms, certainly quite a bit more than what the other models did. But the FV3 model is looks like it's fairly bullish for some activity, and the GFS has a few clusters scattered around tomorrow evening, and a dying area from overnight in southeast Pennsylvania and northern Virginia that just basically plays through before 7 a.m. and then 8 a.m. it's already gone. And then, here comes tomorrow evening. Front goes by. Father's Day looks good. Now, the 12Z run, Joe, with the next front for Tuesday, seemed to move it through a bit faster. This is Monday night now. Instead of having thunderstorms approaching later Tuesday, this is Monday night. It's got this line of storms from northern Maine all the way down into Tennessee, Arkansas. I mean, this is right in here. Look at that. There's your front. Moving right along. So it seems to be the last two runs of the GFS seem to want to move this front through a little faster. Then it kind of gets hung up. And then another push comes during the day on Tuesday. It pushes some showers and storms through into Tuesday afternoon before the front goes offshore. And then we get a shot of dry air for Wednesday into Thursday.
Yes, in fact, I'm looking at the 18Z GFS, the F-Gen map for 700 millibars, and it seems to show...
You can share. I have the sharing turned on if you want to share it.
Oh, well, okay, then. Let's...
it's always turned on
now. Yes, all right. Well, let's see. We'll get that, and we'll put that up and share that. And what I'm showing you now is the 700 millibar F-Gen map with a line of Omega, pretty good line. That's 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. And Joe, I don't know, whatever's left of the tropical system, it's probably somewhere out over here somewhere. It's not really showing up much. It really is going to be all boiled down to the approaching front on Tuesday. And by the time we get to 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, this pushes all of that Omega past New York City, out toward eastern Long Island and out to sea, and we're in a nice, fast westerly airflow. We're southwest ahead of the front, and then we turn westerly behind it. So, yeah, it may be sometime late morning or early afternoon on Tuesday, we may get a line of shower and storm activity. And I think I mentioned yesterday on the GFS X, the extended forecast yesterday, the tabular forecast, that they actually had put more of an emphasis on thunderstorms on the Tuesday system, as
Right.
opposed to what we may see tomorrow, the Saturday. So maybe it will indeed be Tuesday that we may have to deal with possible severe weather. Not to say that we're not out of the woods yet with tomorrow, but it looks like Tuesday may be a rather significant or more considerable, more robust convection threat on in the New York City area.
Yep, agreed. There's certainly between now and then there's plenty of wiggle room with regards to how that's all going to play out. Robert Brown on the chat board was just asked earlier about the Saharan dust, which this time of year usually comes off because it is the dry season. Well, it's from the Sahara Desert, so I mean it's always a dry season there. But the dry season actually extends further south, outside of the desert zone, and you wind up getting these plumes of dust that move offshore. And if you look on the satellite, that hazy shading that you see there off the African coast and extending out into the Atlantic, that is Saharan dust. And if we look at the dry air analysis, we'll probably find that there's probably a lot of mid-level and low-level dry air up in that part of the Atlantic. This is an area that normally does not see tropical cyclone development in the month of June. If you look at the clusters of clouds that are out in the tropical Atlantic, they are quite far to the south. You usually look at this. I'm going to just draw in 10 degrees north latitude, which is just about where I drew that red line. I might be a little bit, maybe that a shade further south, but that's roughly where about 10 north is. I mean, these little tropical waves here are down close to or just north of the equator, so nothing's really going to come out of those. You get to the latter part of July and during the month of August, that whole area shifts northward. Okay, so they start coming off north of 10 degrees north, between 10 and 20, and then the trade winds usually will carry those from east to west. So it's too early to see tropical cyclone development. When I was talking about the dry season, I'm talking about, I'll just get rid of this. So that area between 10 and 20 degrees north, just south of the Sahara Desert, this is their dry season. But when we get into latter part of July and August, the rainy season comes because all the tropical waves, all the waves that are moving across Africa shift northward and bring rain to that area. So that usually tends to shut off the Saharan dust issue when you get to when you start to get into August and September. So these dust plumes will move along. If there's a big enough area, you'll notice that there's a bit of a hazy area in the Caribbean at the start of the loop. It moves very quickly out to the east and disappears. Sometimes you can get these Saharan dust layers in the Caribbean, in the Southwest Atlantic, and even into the Gulf of Mexico, and that will hinder tropical cyclone development. So I just wanted to address that for him.
I'm not sure whether it was Robert or somebody else on the chat board mentioned and used the term SAL, and SAL stands for Saharan air layer,
right,
which is a layer of dry, dusty Saharan air that rides up and over the top of a low-level corridor of moist air that's over the tropical Atlantic, and right at the boundary between the moist air and the dry air, that's where you have the so-called Saharan air layer, the SAL. And since atmospheric temperature normally decreases with height, this inversion acts to put the brakes on any thunderstorms that try to punch through, like punch through that layer. So this happens because the air is in a thunderstorm's updraft suddenly encounters a region where the updraft air is cooler, less buoyant, and to make a long story short, as you just pointed out, Joe, I mean, this is a scenario that is not very favorable if you want to see tropical activity, tropical cyclone activity, and we need for the dust to diminish. The plumes of dust, they're more frequent. They're obviously there during June and into part of July, and then once they begin to fade out as we get deeper into the hurricane season, August and September, that's when you begin to see now finally the intertropical convergence zone, the thunderstorm activity building and creating tropical waves, which eventually lead to tropical storms and eventually hurricanes. So not a very good time right now in that part of the Atlantic for tropical activity. That's why we look toward, let's say, the Gulf of Mexico, for example, for potential tropical activity this early in the season. But all of you who are into the tropics and looking forward to and I don't know why you would look forward to it, but if you're hoping for major tropical activity, you have to wait until just use the, so to speak, the dust. We need to wait for the dust to settle before we get into the hot and heavy time, September and October.
Yes, and that dust was a gift from Mr. and Mrs. W.C. Ridgway of Hollyhock, Virginia.
Yes.
A quick look at the long range, and I just pulled up the upper air. Now, this is for early next week. This is the next deep trough that is dropping into the United States. The only difference between this one and the one we just had is that this one's actually going to drop a little bit further to the west than the one we just had, which means that the bulk of the dry air may wind up going by to our north and coming in and going out a little faster. If you notice, the trough, unlike the one we just had, which is played through the eastern part of the United States completely, and here it is. This is the trough that we just had. This was back on Wednesday night with an upper low just north of Caribou and the bottom of the trough into northern Florida. Well, this one is going to drop down more along about 90 degrees west. And then it just kind of lifts out. So we'll get a day, or we'll get probably 2 days out of this, where the dew points will drop off again into the 40s, and then it pulls out faster, which is this now takes us into the end of next week. And let's see the long range. If these maps would just load, the long range. Another upper low drops in at the end of the month into the Great Lakes. Putting us in kind of a southerly flow here toward the end of the month. So that's not good, because that could put us in clouds and rain if that's right for, hanging around for a while. I'm just taking a look here as we get into the beginning of July, Joe. There's a lingering trough here in the eastern part of the United States. On July 2nd, I'm trying to look for signs of a big ridge developing in the east, and at least on this run, it's not there. Going into the 4th of July, still got some busy westerlies. So it's no sign of any impending heat wave in a pattern like this anytime soon.
Well, and there have been years. 1966 stands out in my memory. When we had the 4th of July holiday, we were enveloped by, yes, I'll use the term now, hellish type weather with temperatures at or even above 100 degrees. So you have years like that. There was I think it was Arthur, where we had a coinciding with the 4th of July holiday. This might have been like 5 or 7 years ago, where we had heavy rain on or around the 4th of July. This year, well, we can't really be certain about tropical activity, but I will agree with you, Joe. It does not look like the best setup for heat as we move into the month of July.
Well, and that's not to say it can't change after the first week of July. I mean, we don't even know if that long range is correct, because models have been kind of flipping a little bit for that first week of July, some runs showing a ridge building in the east, others like this one not showing a ridge building in the east. Not a whole lot of consistency there, but there's a long way to go to take us into the early part of September. So we got a 2.5 months here of heat wave potential. It'll just be a matter of whether the pattern, what's the upper air pattern going to be. I would the only thing I would say is, if we keep seeing these troughs dropping into the eastern part of the United States, that's all fine and dandy now, but come August and September, if we got tropical storms running around and we start getting these deep troughs that drop into the eastern part of the United States, then that could wind up being a bit problematic, depending on where the storms are located and how they match up to any particular trough. So I just wanted to mention that it's wonderful this time of year because you get all this wonderful dry air as the troughs go by, but you could also get into a dangerous situation if a trough sets up to our west and creates a southerly flow along the east coast, and if you have a tropical system somewhere nearby, then where it goes, where it's going to go. It's going to go up the coast. So, well, we'll see. Lots of intrigue as always with these things.
Johnny Quest asked about I think it was Johnny. It might have been somebody else on the chat board, but somebody asked about what was the strongest June hurricane. And one of the things about that year, 1966, it was a hot summer, and especially a particularly hot late spring into summer. And that may have set the stage for what happened in June of that year. June of 1966, we had Hurricane Alma, and Alma moved up along the west coast of Florida, crossed through northern Florida, and then moved along the southeast coastline of the United States. Alma was a Category 3. It was a major hurricane, and it formed during the first week of June. I mean, to have a Cat 3 in early June, that's exceedingly difficult to get, but that, again, may have been affiliated with all the hot weather that was around in that particular summer season. So Alma was there, Category 3. I think it had winds clocked at, just looking, can't find it. 100 highest winds 125 with lowest pressure at 970 millibar. So that was Alma. That was June 4th through June 14th of 1966. So that probably is, if it's not the strongest, it's certainly among the strongest ever to form.
Well, it's not
and
the
affect
strongest.
the United States in June.
It's not the strongest.
It is not the strongest.
I have the strongest. I thought this was the case. The first thing that came up to my mind was Hurricane Audrey in the Gulf of Mexico in 1957, and indeed, it is Hurricane Audrey in 1957. 946 millibars was the lowest pressure, and 120.
Wow.
They carried 125 mile-an-hour sustained. This is an old radar loop that I just found on Wikipedia, and you can see it there. Or satellite loop, or whatever that is, or maybe that's a simulated thing. They didn't have satellites. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Hang on a second. I don't know if that's real, or let me take a look and see what that's supposed to be. I mean,
it's got to be radar. Maybe
it's got to be.
radar,
It's
Joe.
got to be a radar because they didn't have satellites in those days.
Right.
That was back in the day. Let's see.
Well,
that's a radar mosaic. That was a radar mosaic imagery of Hurricane Audrey from 3 radar sites as it made landfall on June 27th. And one story about Audrey, because the folks in Louisiana, particularly the ones that live in Southwest Louisiana, will tell you, one of the memories that stays with them is that the flooding that occurred here was the storm surge flooding was so bad that all the freshly buried people that were may have been buried in cemeteries days before the hurricane approached, those crypts were opened and washed up. So there was a mix of they couldn't get an accurate death toll because they had to figure out, well, who are those that died during the storm, and then who are these who are the bodies that from people that died a couple of weeks before. So that's not fun. Bad enough you have to go through something like that, but can you imagine? You had a family member pass away, you buried them, and only to find out that their body washed out from the storm surge. But that's one of the things that this storm did. So, but strong June cyclones are rare, thankfully.
And here's another one, Alex.
Bless you.
Sorry about that.
Well, that was me last night.
Yeah.
Now it's you tonight.
Just suddenly came up.
Yes.
Alex in 2010 It said this is what I've just called up here. Despite the lowered intensity, Audrey remains tied with 2010's Hurricane Alex as being the most intense Atlantic hurricane in June by pressure, and with 1966's Hurricane Alma, which we just spoke of, as having the highest winds of any June hurricane in the Atlantic. So there you go, Audrey, Alex, and Alma, all A storms, I might add.
Right.
So those were active. Those were active years. Those years.
And by the way, we have the 7 p.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. It's at the 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time advisory. It is still potential tropical cyclone 3, 28.3 north, 91.1 west. Top winds are 45 miles an hour, moving north at 9. So they didn't do it for this advisory, and unless there's a shocking surprise, I would guess that they won't do it for the next one either. I just want to see what the geography is in terms of how far it is from land. It was 125 south of Morgan City on the old advisory and 270 southeast of Mobile. On the new advisory, it's 100 miles south of Morgan City and 260 miles south, I'm not southeast, southwest, 260 miles southwest of Mobile. We'll if it doesn't do it on the next advisory, Joe, it's going to go down as potential tropical cyclone 3, and that's it.
Right, and you're probably right. After the season is over, they'll do a reanalysis and say, well, we should have called it a tropical storm or whatever. So, but it'll be too late because they'll probably be attaching the C storm, the Claudette name, to another system somewhere down the road. But we'll see.
All right, so Sunday is Father's Day, and I want to extend my Father's Day wishes to you, and also to all the dads that are on the chat board tonight. So Joe and I are going to be enjoying Father's Day, so there will be no Sunday show this week, but you got a Friday show instead. But no Sunday show.
You got a Friday.
Right. And on Sunday, there won't be too much weather going on anyway. So this is a day. I got my kids are coming over. I'm seeing my grandsons tomorrow, and my daughters, and that'll be a lot of fun. And JJ's already asleep because he has a long day tomorrow because he has to travel in the truck with me. So that's my day. So everybody have a great Father's Day. Joe, you have a great Father's Day.
It's gotta be. I don't have that pleasure just yet. Maybe sometime down the road I will. But it must seem strange, doesn't it, to have these little kids come running up to you and say, "Grandpa"? It must be kind of a weird feeling, or
no? I have to tell you from the get-go, and now they're no longer infants, and my grandson, I have one that's 3, the other one is a year and a half, and they both talk up a storm, and I'm Pop, and well, something. It's you get all the good stuff with your grandkids, because the minute that they start becoming a problem, you just pick them up and you turn to your child and say, "This is yours, okay? You need to fix this." Okay? But you get all the good, and none of the, I don't want to say bad, because that's not the right word. Let's call it problematic. All the problematic stuff you can just hand right back to your child and say, "Fix this," and then when you have that fixed, exactly, you give him back to me. It's a lot of fun, Joe. It really is.
All right. Well, Pop, I hope you have a great Sunday, and happy Father's Day again to all the dads out there. And whatever the weather, I hope that you all have a great day. And we will be back. I suppose when we come back on Monday, we might be talking about the potential for severe weather on Tuesday. So we'll see how it all pans out.
All right. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for being here on a Friday night. We will see you on Monday. Good night, everybody.
Nighty night.